And now, live from Laurel, Maryland, USA, home of the Laurel Racetrack, it's snack time.
Good afternoon. It's 3:15, and hopefully, if you're anything like me, and I think you are, you're ready for a snack. Okay, today's snack concerns a time where Snackboy made a big old fool of himself, and basically, if I had to say that today's snack is about anything at all, it's about perception. Bad perception on my part and keen perception on the part of another. At the time, I was a waiter, and it was the first waiting job I'd ever had. It was a restaurant in Bethesda, and I won't say the name of it. I guess I could. It's O'Donnell's. It's a seafood restaurant in Bethesda, and I remember to get the job, and this is kind of beside the point, but just to kind of spice up the snack a little. To get the job, what I did was I told them that I'd had 4 or 5 years of waiting tables experience where I had none. Delicious deceit. No, I did. I lied to get myself in the door, and it worked. And I told them I was from like somewhere else, and that I'd waited tables at restaurants in another state. And they hired me, and basically I got punished for my lies by being this horrible waiter. I mean, everything. I learned a lot about waiting tables, and I was able to go on to bigger and better things and make some money at it. But I was thrown into the den of wolves, and I had these sections of like 5 and 6 tables of people with a lot of money. It was a pretty upscale restaurant, and I, like a fool, constantly messed up. I would put tea and water glasses. I would set the table wrong. Anything I could do wrong, I would just mix up. I'd give the wrong check to the wrong table, and management pretty quickly had their eye on me. So this, of course, made me even more tense, and the tenser I got, the worse I did. And pretty soon, word spread around Bethesda that I was the worst waiter of all time, yet no one fired me. Although one time they did say, "You're skating on thin ice, kid," which is pretty dramatic. And so what I did was one day I was waiting tables, and this woman and her husband came in, and she was the prima donna. I mean, she actually looked very good. She came in, and she had that Uma Thurman Pulp Fiction cut. It was black, and it kind of it was cropped in toward her face. It was so black, like dyed black, that it was almost blue, like a Superman comic. And she wore this tight dress, and she was dripping with jewels, and when she sat, she had a lot of grace and elegance, and she wouldn't even look at me. And her husband sat down. He was older, and you can tell he was the money. So as she wanted something, she would look at her husband, and he would communicate for her. "We want more Bristota bread. We want more Bristota bread." And I would bring it to them, and then she would look at him and just point at the water glass. "Can you see that our water glass is almost empty? Can you see this? Do we need to remind you?" And of course, I was starting to get a little agitated. So we had this window into the kitchen where if you're in the kitchen, you can see out to your section. And if you're the section, you can see the kitchen and feel very good about where you're eating because it was a nice, pristine, clean, gleaming kitchen. Anyway, let's get into the details of the story. I needed to vent. I needed to talk about the people at my table. So I went into the kitchen, and I saw my friend Jennifer, the waitress, and I was like, Jennifer, these people, you would not believe them. And I started getting into the details about how annoying they were. Well, little did I know that the woman at my table who was bothering me was actually deaf. And the reason she didn't talk was that she would just basically have her husband communicate for her. So this whole time, I'm really thinking she's just totally rude, where actually she has a handicap that I had no idea about. So I still don't know, and I'm not knowing that this woman can, yes, here's the worst part, read lips. I was probably 35 feet from her table, through a glass wall, and I was talking. I was like, that bitch, that bitch over there with that wannabe Uma Thurman Pulp Fiction cut is telling me, she can't even talk. She's got her husband whipped. He's like, "Get the bread, get the blah, blah, blah." So basically, back at her table, about 35 feet away, she's sitting there, and she is watching me move my mouth. So to her, it's like this. She's like this, and I'm going. and she can dictate and read every syllable I say about her. And it gets worse. Then Jennifer starts busting on her. She's like, that haircut is so tired, blah, blah, blah. Oh, look at her. You can just tell that those diamonds are fake. We are just going on. And the more we go on, the harder we're laughing. And she's fuming. All of a sudden, through the glass window, I can see my manager approaching the table. She is throwing a fit. She's waving her arms in there, and she's like, her hands have become claws, and they're signing at my manager. And that's when I'm realizing what's going on. Much like The Graduate, when Dustin Hoffman is looking down at the wedding through the glass, and he can't hear anything, but he can tell all the events are unfolding out of his control. She's out there going and pointing at me. And I can just... And then I see my manager, like in slow motion, turn, and from across the restaurant, he looks at me, and his face is just growing beet red. And then Jennifer and I look at each other, and she puts her hand over her mouth, and she goes, "You don't think she could?" And I was like, "Read our lips!" And, of course, we figured it all out, and it was quite the drama. And that is why today's story was on perception. Do you like that? I'm just getting into that whole drama thing. I guess because I thought of Uma Thurman, and that's very Pulp Fiction. Remember the drama.
Cut.